Side hustle is, I've got to do the daily thing to do my job.
Yes.
But the side hustle is where I'm going to go make a little extra scratch for me.
Yes.
Because I want something more out of my life.
This is Brent Richardson, and welcome to the Business Minutia Podcast, where our focus is on the details of business that are often passed over by traditional classes and leadership training. We focus on the stories of real people who have tried, failed, and learned through their experiences and are willing to share their lessons with others. Well, if that doesn't whet your appetite for this week's episode, I don't know what will. I've been waiting to publish this interview for quite some time. This is a conversation I got to sit down with a good friend, a guy that I love to hang out with. I am not the type A entrepreneur mindset person, but Kris is, and I'm grateful for that. I enjoy sitting down and listening to stories from people like him and hear about their successes and their failures. Kris has started 9 different business ventures, and he's the kind of guy that takes returns off of one and just doubles down on the next one, and that's crazy for me to think of, but again, really awesome to hear about. Now, we got into this concept of side hustle, which I think is really cool and applies both for entrepreneurial mindset folks or for corporate people. And at the end of the episode, I'll talk a little bit about how I've applied that side hustle mentality to my own career and what I do from a corporate perspective. In the meantime, enjoy this interview. You can learn more about Kris at redwagonproperties.com. And I'll chat with you at the end of the episode. Welcome, folks. Thanks for joining this week. I have a special guest. Kris, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Kris Hochart. I am a serial entrepreneur and live in San Antonio, Texas.
We're going to be talking about entrepreneurial activities, one of your passions, and developing people with entrepreneurial passions.
Absolutely.
Have you ever had something, so to maybe tell us a little bit about your background and how you got off into this? What did you do before you decided to go off and just do whatever you wanted to do?
I haven't had a W-2 job since I was probably, 16, okay, working in fast food. Since then, I would say that going into waiting tables classifies as not W-2 because you live on tips.
Got it.
And then you go into bartending, and then you go into a sales job, and then you go into various avenues. And really, sales is probably the career that I was in that gave me the biggest thirst for entrepreneurship. I recognized that it wasn't the salesperson that made the residual income. There were some jobs that you could always get a gravy train that would have you build a base, and that's the golden handcuffs, and you keep doing sales and you've got the residual. But reality is it's always the owners that seem to be the ones that profited most in a company. So that's where that genesis came from.
So before we get off into the details of the things that you've learned, give our listeners a taste of something that's gone wrong. You've had some pretty significant, sizable investment successes and entrepreneurial successes. Well, tell me some example of one that did not go well.
Okay, well, here's the thing with entrepreneurship you have to understand. The standard statistic that you hear is 80% of all businesses fail. Okay. So, and that's just a small business risk. That can be from starting a restaurant to whatever, selling Cracker Jacks. It doesn't matter. 80% of all businesses fail. I've had 50% success rate, which means I'm beating the averages, right?
Good.
Like we can look at that as, well, half of what this guy touches explodes. Or you could say, well, he's beating the average. And I tend to look at the glass half full. It is half empty, but hey, it's 50-50, so you call it what you want. So if you wanted to know my biggest failure, which is an interesting way to start the podcast off, my biggest failure, I think was in, is it 9 years ago now? We were doing a real estate development deal, and I lost about $750,000 over the course of this deal going bad. So a partner and I bought an acre of land, and it was dirt speculation. It was before the crash in 2008, so it must have been 2005 or 2006, now that I think about the time frame. We bought an acre of land. We're building 4 fourplexes, and we literally sold the fourplexes while it was just dirt. Okay. And we had construction contracts to build the fourplexes. Well, it turns out that guy committed some fraud, and he's still in prison.
Okay.
And as he had committed the fraud, the bank had funded his other projects as well. So the bank started saying, hey, if we go ahead and give you this money on this project, can you finish this other one, not our project, and get it closed so that we can get that deal funded and continue. So they ended up in cahoots with the builder. Long story really short, this bank had been in business 94 years, and they got seized by the OCC, and then was in control by the FDIC. And so while we were suing him for the losses, suing the bank for the losses, the bank being seized by the federal court, by the FDIC, took it into federal court and became a federal lawsuit. So
Kris, it's like the perfect storm of like everything on paper. It looks like this is a good deal.
We were on schedule to make $200,000 profit on this deal.
And this wasn't your first entrepreneurial activity or real estate effort. It was just
I had been in real estate for a couple of years by now. I'd flipped other properties. We'd made good profit, and this was just a
perfect storm.
An expensive storm.
Yeah. How was the recovery mentally, psychologically? What's the effect of going through something like that?
I did that one with a partner, and he was a lot more senior to me. We'd had similar backgrounds. He was airborne infantry as well. He was a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and he had more real estate experience than I had, and I was the real estate guy at the time. So that tells you there was a lot of education at the table. And his perspective was, hey, we lost it on this one. We'll go make it on another one.
Wow.
It's okay. Yeah. He's like, we just received a Harvard education on what not to do on a real estate deal. We had never done a development, so we got an education on how to do developments wrong. Yeah. And we should never do it that way again.
Now, have you tackled other projects similar since?
Absolutely,
and took a different approach, right?
Took a completely different approach, yeah.
Expensive lesson, but one learned, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So maybe talk to us a little bit about what you do today, and we can kind of inform the listener there.
Well, today I own a real estate company in San Antonio called Red Wagon Properties. We are our only thing we advertise is real estate property management. So we manage 530 homes, which are single-family residential homes. But what I don't advertise, and that is a key portion of our business, is I actually sell those investment real estate properties. So people come to me because they want to invest in real estate. It's a tangible asset. It's a lot, I say safer. I don't know that I can really say that it's safer because you can't predict the future than something like the stock market that can tank tomorrow, but they can still put their hands on real estate.
Sure.
And we can put a lease in there that's going to have a scheduled rent roll. Historically, real estate tends to do very well. So people seek me out for my expert advice on what to buy. And I sell about 4 to 5 rental homes per month that we also end up managing.
So you studied this? This is something you have a education background in?
No, that's really funny. No,
I'm baiting you.
Yeah. So no, I didn't study real estate necessarily other than to get your license, which at the time, I think it was 2 box tops and $4 to General Mills, and they'd send you your real estate license in the mail. So no, I didn't study it. It was more of, as a real estate agent, people wanted to go out and look for the house they wanted to buy and live in. And they wanted to go look at 20 houses. And I wasn't interested in looking at 20 houses to not find the house. Whereas an investor said, here's my criteria. I need 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,200 square feet, 2-car garage. I need the rent roll to be approximately this after the purchase price. And I'm like, shoot, I can look at 1,000 homes from my desk before I ever put a gallon in the gas tank to go look at that property. And that's how I fell into the investment niche. Turns out I did really well at it. So I started flying out to California and giving investment seminars to different Keller Williams agencies' offices out there. Wow. And I would pay them a referral fee for their clients coming to the seminar that I was teaching. And when they bought property in San Antonio, I'd send them a referral check.
So take us back before you were involved in real estate, before your initial thought process, because you held jobs prior to your entrepreneurial endeavors and your business you run now. What's the background? Take us through your education process.
I got my degree in chemistry, and that's been uber unhelpful. right? Like that has nothing to do with anything that I've ever actually done. But there is a story there. And I think the highlighted cheerleader that needs to get the limelight on that one is my wife. So we're engaged at the time. And I still remember the stoplight we were sitting at. She's sitting in the car, and I'm getting my degree in chemistry. I had been really good at sales and selling advertising for an online ad firm, and that's after the .com crash, right? So websites aren't exactly that popular. And I'm really good at it. I'm helping build this company. We're sitting at a stoplight, and she's like, so I'm having a hard time understanding. You're getting your chemistry degree, and you want to do sales. So I was going to go into pharmaceutical sales. She's like, I'm having a hard time picturing you doing that. Why is this what you want to do with your career? And I said, well, it's going to be a really good living for the family. And she's like, okay, but you're going to sit in a doctor's office for 25 to 30 minutes to get into the doctor for a 5-minute meeting to make your sale, to leave, to go sit in another doctor's office for 25 to 30 minutes. And I said, yeah, that's kind of how that whole thing goes. And I get to take them out to lunch and stuff, right? And she's like, yeah, you're going to sit in a doctor's office. I'm like, well, I'll just have to get really good with my time. Maybe I'll get a lot of reading done. She's like, have you met you? Like, you are not going to sit still for 25 minutes. Yeah. You're going to hate that job. And I thought, okay, back to it provides a really good income for my family, right? And she said, if you could do anything you wanted to do, anything at all, there's no limitations, you don't have to make any sort of income, if you could do anything you want, what would it be? And it was at that point I told her, I said, I'd want to own it. I just want to own it. Whatever that is, I want to own it. I don't care if I'm selling widgets at the widget store or services. I just know that owning the company is where I see a future in freedom.
Yeah. You think that's for everybody? You think there's a certain kind of people that fit that more than another, or is it just across the board?
No, absolutely not. And I don't know that every entrepreneur would be so emphatic about that answer, but I've come to learn and realize that there are some people that are just really good operators, that are not visionaries, that are not driven, they don't have that dream. As an entrepreneur, the first commitment you have to make is to that process, and you could starve. You can absolutely make nothing and be loving your life. Yeah. Because you're driving for that freedom. Yeah. If that doesn't sound appealing to you, then don't do it. Because in entrepreneurship, it's not like which 40 hours am I going to work this week? It's you're going to work 80 to 120 hours to get that thing off the ground. And once you finally start to see a profit, that's when you get to get a little more flexible with your schedule. Yeah, yeah. And everybody looks at my life today and they're like, oh, hey, living the high life, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, you want to ask my wife what it was like when I was working 20 hours a day, getting the company off the ground. Yeah. And by the way, I loved it.
Yeah. So she inspires you. You're thinking twice about this. What happens next?
That's probably the most beautiful thing, because she put her money where her mouth is. I said, well, I know advertising for the wedding industry. There's this new product on the market, this chocolate fountain, and people are using these in weddings and quinceañeras, and I know I could do that. And she's like, okay. How much is a chocolate fountain? I said, well, they're kind of new. It's kind of expensive. They're about $5,000. So she spent $6,000 for the materials that I needed to start my first company. And at the end of a year, I had 3 machines. We had a great name and reputation, and I was making about $40,000 a year with my first business, which isn't a lot of money.
Yeah, but it was your thing.
But it was mine.
Yeah,
it was
you
mine.
owned it,
and I was super happy.
Wow, it's fantastic.
And what was really cool about that is I also learned one of my first real estate lessons at the time was scalability. Not real estate. I'm sorry, entrepreneurship lessons.
Right.
Scalability. Right. It wasn't a scalable operation.
Okay.
So I ended up selling that company. My wife and I had bought a house, and it was a terrible experience.
When you say it wasn't scalable, why?
Oh, good question. Every machine that I brought on, if I wasn't operating it, I'd have to have an employee. Mm-hmm. You're only making $700 a night by renting out the machine. And when you're paying your employee $200 and your material costs for your strawberries and your chocolate are $200, you're making $300 on a machine. Yeah. Well, you have to run a crazy amount of machines to make any profit. And so that's what I mean by scalable.
Got it.
It just wasn't scalable.
Lemonade stand 101 type of stuff that you don't see till you get off into it.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely right.
Got it. Okay. So you go off and you see the scalability challenge. So what do you do next? Would you count that as moderately successful, right? But you hit a wall where, okay, this is as far as this goes.
Oh, I think it was if there's an education that you pay for out of losses, this was an education I got with scholarships, right? Like I got a scholarship on this one. I got a full education on scalability. And I sought some advice at this point, and my mom really wanted me to go sell software integration for the healthcare market up in Seattle. She's like, Kris, you'll make $200,000 a year. You're one of the best salesmen I've ever met. You're smart. You can do this. You got your degree. This is right up your alley. And I'm like, okay, but I'd have to move my family, and I wouldn't own it. Yeah. I wouldn't own that software company. Yeah. But what she was hitting on there was a product that had more zeros behind it. So I realized then that I either needed to sell a product that didn't cost a lot and a shitload of them, or I needed to sell a product that cost a lot and a few of those. Yeah. And I wasn't in the mood to invent toothpicks, and somebody else had already done that. So I was just kicking it around. We were buying a house. It was a terrible experience. And I thought, if that's what real estate's all about, I can do better than that experience.
So where did the real estate idea, where did that come from for you?
From buying that house.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I thought, well, I can do better than that guy.
Yeah.
So I went and got my real estate license. This is beautiful. You want to learn the lesson that I have learned over and over again?
Please.
So that you don't have to do it. This is great. This is great. Pride cometh before the fall. Okay. I have been my own worst enemy every single time I get to this place. And if I could just learn that when I get back to this place again, and I'm going to tell you what it is, I won't keep repeating this mistake. And that is, I become an alchemist, right? I think everything I touch is going to turn to gold. Okay. There's this arrogance that I end up like buying my own bullshit as I move forward. So I've been really successful with this chocolate fountain company. Whoa, slow clap. 40 grand. Woohoo. Yeah. So I sell the chocolate fountain company, and I don't exactly remember the dollar amount, but I do remember what I did. I took 100% of the money and went to the radio station and invested in a radio ad campaign for my new real estate business so that I could generate leads for listings and buyers, because I was the newest, baddest real estate agent in town, by the way, who had never sold a house.
Yeah. Right? That seems to be a consistent thing from the entrepreneurs I've talked to, that they double down.
Double down, baby.
They double down. It's an Elon Musk strategy, if I've ever heard it. Just double down on the next opportunity.
I got one lead for a lady who wanted me to sell her house that would not stop smoking in the house. House never sold. So I am literally a month and a half into real estate. I have blown my load and I have no leads. And so I walk into the real estate office with my hat in my hand, and there's a guy there that did some coaching, and his name was Bob Contreras. I'll never forget his generous offer. I told him, I said, here's what I've done. This was a really stupid thing. I've now sold a company. I have no income. I'm in real estate, and I'm in with both feet. I need to provide for my family. Will you teach me how to do this right? And coach me on it? He said, sure. My fee is, I think it was $8,000 at the time. And I said, so about that $8,000, I don't have any money because I blew my load. And he said, tell you what I'm going to do with you. If you do what I tell you to do, I'll take 5% of all your commissions until I'm paid. So I don't get paid if you're not successful.
It's not a bad deal.
It was a sweetheart deal.
Yeah.
And so he taught me everything from the ground up, from building your sphere and how you're going to do your marketing to farming. And dude, I knocked on doors. I did everything it took to get my real estate business off the ground.
Okay. Was there a turning point that clicked?
I don't know if there was just a turning point because it was a growing process, but there was something that changed with my confidence. And that was, I knew I could move to any place in America and open my real estate business. And I knew I had the skill set to organically build it from the ground up. Yeah. Which is huge. It's huge because there's a lot of people that they got started in real estate because they had an existing sphere. I didn't have an existing sphere. I was just graduating college. I didn't know people buying houses. So that gives me a sense of freedom and confidence in the ability that I know that I will always be able to provide for my family because I have that skill set.
How long did it take before you got to a point you were like, okay, now I'm providing, or I'm comfortable. I've gotten out of the, when did the 20 hours a day piece stop, or you said, okay, this is going to work?
Oh, not for a few years, but that's okay because I love what I do. So it's not And mind you, I want you to understand that when I say I was working these 20 hours a day, you have to realize that may be a slight exaggeration. I'll tell you the schedule here in just a second. It's actually not an exaggeration. No, it's not. It's pretty,
doesn't sound unrealistic.
It's pretty crazy, actually.
Especially if it's something you love. You're not tracking hours.
Yeah, you're not.
Right.
You're not. And you're trying to make it. So, so what happened in the first year, I was selling those investment real estate deals and flying out to California and giving these seminars. I was on track to win Rookie of the Year for our real estate office. First guy out of the box to, whatever, make that a much amount of money. However, there was another guy who was a hockey player on the hockey team of San Antonio who had retired and went into real estate, and he had a big sphere. So he ended up eclipsing me and beating me that year. Brian Shantz. Great guy too, by the way. So anyway, I get into at the end of my first year of real estate, and I've sold something like, 40 homes, and was selling all these investment properties. And I've referred every single one of those properties to an outside property manager. And there was this disconnect because when I'm analyzing the numbers, I'm telling an owner, here's how much this is going to cost, here's how much rent you're going to get, this is what the repairs are going to be, et cetera, right? I turn it over to another property manager, and that property manager is either lazy or doesn't do his job or has different contractors that give different pricing. Either way, some of those numbers shift. And when those numbers shift, it made a liar out of me. And that wasn't going to work for my business. So I went to my broker and I said, hey, I really need to do property management because I'm making promises that other people aren't delivering on, and I need there to be that continuity. And they said, not only no, but hell no. You've only done real estate for a year, and property management is the highest litigated form of real estate. And I said, well, I can appreciate that, but we need to figure something out. And she's like, yeah, you should just keep referring it, but work on your relationship with the person you're referring to. I said, that's just not an option for me anymore. I really need to do this. And she said, you'll have to find somewhere else to do it. And I said, okay. And so I left. I teamed up with another property manager who hung my license, and I brought on in that next year 80 different properties in my second year of business. And that was we had a split arrangement. I was getting 40% of the revenue on it, and he was getting 60% because all I was doing is closing the door, and he was having to do all the back end work.
Sure.
And that worked until he felt like 40% was too much. And then I'm like, well, then I'm going to take my toys and go home and build my own sandbox.
Sure.
And so I did.
Yeah.
I went and opened my own company with Red Wagon. Now, that's where the 20 hours a day becomes a reality. So it's not until year 3. The first 2 years were pretty gravy. I was closing deals.
You're learning.
I'm learning. Well, I'm just closing deals.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't have to stay up all night and do
but
the
it sounds
accounting.
like you're close to the action to where you're seeing the intricacies.
Yes.
I've heard it said you can't separate strategy and execution. Like you've got a strategy comes from being in the trenches, and the execution to see. Sounds like that was that time for you that you were seeing all that, right?
Good fact. And then so now I go out onto my own and I hang my own shingle, and I open Red Wagon. It was actually Red Wagon Realty at the time. We've had a name change, and I've got I think I left, and we split the clients where we thought it was fair, and I think I had 50 clients, and I would literally go to work and do real estate from 8 to 5. I would go home at 5 and have dinner with my family, and had a baby girl at the time, and I would see her and put her to bed at 8. And then at 8, I'd spend about an hour with my wife. At 9 o'clock, I would go back to the office, and I would stay up all night doing the accounting that I had to do for property management.
Wow.
And following up on repairs and accounts receivables and all that. And I would only do this a couple of times a month, but gosh, it was freaking terrible. And then at 8 o'clock in the morning, I would start doing real estate again, and I would do real estate until 5 o'clock, and I would go home and have dinner with the family, and then I'd crash that night after all the work was done. So I would literally work around the clock at least 2 times a month to make sure everything was done.
And how long did that roll?
That ran for about a year until I felt so. The hardest hire is your first hire because it comes straight off the bottom line. And I was looking to hire somebody to help me with the accounting, but when you hire an accountant, I mean, who's going to work for you for $15,000 a year, right? So you can hire somebody part-time to help you with bookkeeping, but that wasn't really what I needed. I needed somebody engaged in property management. So it wasn't until I started making 6 figures, about $100,000 a year, that I felt comfortable bringing somebody on. But then I went from $100,000 a year to 60. Because you're hiring somebody at 40, and so that's like the biggest The biggest challenge. When you hire the next person, so your $40,000 an hour worker, that person's going to get you to 120, right? Because they're going to make their money back on your behalf.
Right.
And then once you've got to that point with the freedom that you've gotten, the next person you hire is not such a big deal.
Yeah.
Right? Because now I'm only going down to 80.
Okay.
So the first hire is the toughest. And I think there's probably a book that should be written called The Ugly Middle. And the ugly middle is that entrepreneurial transition where it comes from you make everything to you don't make everything anymore. You got to start splitting that pie up or you're not going to have any freedom.
Sure. Where you came from that previously to owning it all by yourself and then letting some go.
Right.
And then starting that scale process like you'd learned previously.
That's right.
Bringing it through the lens of the execution that you'd seen and being able to put that strategy together.
That's right.
Now, how many different companies have you actually kicked off? Has it been, were you all exclusively real estate since then?
No, I'm on my 9th company right now. Yeah. The 9th one is a little,
so real estate's an element of what you do, but your real passion is just starting new things.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's somewhat of an addiction.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is people think, well, you just start stuff and it works. No, man. Like I said, 50% of all businesses have failed. I'm on my 9th. It hasn't failed yet. So I'm hoping to break my 50-50 average. No, I've done a couple of different things. I've done one that was another failure, which was Mommy Time. I've had some other successes. A mulch recycling facility. That's probably one of my largest home runs. I just haven't realized the equity yet. Okay. We bought a piece of land on the northwest side of San Antonio that had this huge mulch pile on it that was the city of San Antonio, or excuse me, the state of Texas was litigating against this property. And I don't think we really understood the gravity of that. So we came in and one element, it's kind of a real estate play because of the location. But in order to pay for the real estate, we had to build this mulch recycling business. So we bought this, and I'm cutting out some failure details in the process. Do you want me to include those?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So the first thing we thought we were going to do, because we're geniuses, right? We bought this air curtain incinerator that we shipped in from Florida. It cost me $80,000 to buy this machine and ship it here from Florida. And It's like this extra wide load, special permits, whatever. We dropped this thing on the ground. Before we fired it up, we're about to start lighting this thing up and start pouring wood into this thing.
What does this thing do?
Okay, it incinerates. It blows air into an existing fire cycle,
right?
So that it burns it faster. You know, like you blow on a fire, it gets
really crazy hot.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you're trying to, and it's got ceramic walls like the space shuttle, right?
Right.
So we're trying to burn this stuff really fast so that we can get this pile cleaned up so that we can gain the value of the real estate. Well, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality comes out and they almost, I think they shit themselves. Like they were like, what are you doing? You have to have an air permit for this. You've got to have all these different regulation things. I'm like, I'm just a 30-year-old kid. I don't know what you're talking about. And so that was a good way to start it off wrong. At the same time, it started off good because that was a genuine truth. Like I was just a 30-year-old kid who had no idea what I was doing. I was just trying to make a buck. Right. And so I ended up sitting in negotiations with them for about 6 months until we came up with a negotiated plan to use the incinerator and other methods to get that property cleaned up. Comes 6 months later, so we start doing the process. Turns out it's a terrible method. Okay. It doesn't work really well at all. So all that negotiation to be able to use this incinerator we bought, and we don't even like the incinerator. So we've got this thing sitting here that basically it's not worth anything to us because we can't move fast enough with the material. So my buddy that I was doing this with, his name's Waylon. He still runs the company today. It's called New Burning Bush. It's on the northwest side of town. And there's kind of a story there too, but he's like, let's buy this bowl grinder and grind it into mulch and see what we can do. And I'm like, do you realize how much mulch this is? Like, this is so much mulch material. So I go back to TC.
This is a massive piece of property with giant
40
piles
acres. 40 acres. And when you put a bulldozer on top of it, it looks like a matchbox.
Yeah.
Like a matchbox.
So people just
truck.
had been piling
for years.
Debris, junk, everything. This is all, no, it's all organic trees and brush and everything else, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The redneck version in East Texas, you light it on fire, but it's too big. This is massive, and it burned the state down.
There was actually a fire on another mulch pile similar to this one. It was bigger than this one. It cost $3.2 million to put the fire out in a whole year to do it.
So the grinder option.
Yeah. So we start grinding the material. I go back to TCEQ and I'm like, look, I got a ton of material. I'm trying to figure this out. And they said, well, you can use that as a fuel in different plants that need energy. So you could use it as a fuel for like electricity production or whatever. We ended up brokering a deal with Cemex on the northeast side of San Antonio, and they were mixing the mulch with rubber tires as an alternative fuel to pet coke, which is called petroleum coke, which is an oil or a product that a natural resource that's not renewable.
Yeah.
And ours is considered renewable because it's trees and they grow, right? Okay, so they got a win because they ended up in a renewable resource. We got a win because we could get rid of our stuff and basically at the cost that it cost us to make it. So then we bought a 100-yard truck, and we started shipping 10 100-yard truckloads per day at 1,000 yards a day, every day for like 8 months before we finally got all that material cleaned up off the property.
Yeah.
At the end of that next year, it was kind of funny. I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, this is so successful. We hit a major home run. We knocked the leather off the ball, and I got my feet up. I'm like, this is great. Well, my buddy Waylon, who's also doing this business with me, he's working his ass off. He's out there in Texas heat, climbing up underneath diesel machines, welding on these machines, and it wasn't fair and equitable anymore. And I'm looking at him like, hey, no, let's turn around and sell this property and make a big profit. And because he was in real estate at the time as well. And he's like, so I kind of like this business. Now, mind you, the mulch business was now making $250,000 a year.
Wow.
It was great.
Right.
$250,000 a year.
Yeah.
He's like, I really like this business. And I'm like, that's not the plan. That's not the plan. The plan is to sell this and move on. He's like, yeah, I really want to hang my real estate license up and I really want to keep doing this.
Wow.
And I said, well, all right. So how do we get out of this deal together? By the way, the whole deal done on a handshake.
Yeah.
We bought the property for $976,000 on a handshake. We didn't have any documentation for how we were going to work together or how to dissolve it or anything. Anyway, so we just talked about it. We just said, well, here's just how much debt we have as a company and all the machinery that we've bought, and here's how much debt we have on the land, and this is how much the company makes. And we basically ended up splitting it out, and he paid me with 15 acres of property that I own free and clear. And he got 25 acres and all the equipment and all the debt and the business. And that 15 acres is worth about $1.3 million today. Okay. So, that was a major home run. And that's that one. That's a mulch business.
Right. It's a good example. I asked for the listeners to see that you're not just real estate. I think it's anybody that knows you, that spent some time talking to you, if you see something shiny and interesting that's challenging, you're like, tell me more. Yeah. And you want to go chase those.
It's a problem, actually.
Right. Which I think, folks either have this entrepreneurial itch or they don't, right? You can get it over time as well, or maybe it was always there, but that's definitely, and I think that's also something that you have a passion for, which is helping people that do want to scratch that itch and say, well, don't do these things, right? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if I can help you avoid any of the stupid things I've done, goodness, please learn from me. Please. Yeah. Don't learn yourself.
Any other, big items you'd say? So when you're developing folks today and working and what's the process that you use?
It's very much a process going back to basics. I use a lot of the things that the original coach Bob had given me. By the way, I also hire coaches. I still hire coaches. So I've had 3 different coaches. I'm looking at my 4th coach, which I'll probably start that process in July.
Now, what does a coach look like? What do you mean?
You got different deliverables for each thing, right? So my first coach was Bob Contreras. My next coach was David Herdlinger, who's still coaching on the East Coast. And that guy is amazing.
And these are business coaches? These are life coaches? What do you mean?
So both. Bob was strictly real estate.
Okay.
David Herdlinger, I didn't go to him next. The next one was The Core with Rick Ruby. And he's over in North Carolina, and he was specifically real estate, but they preach life balance. So they're really focused on hitting your financial goals. But at the same time, they ask you, what's your family look like? What's this look like? And they're trying to keep you in balance all the time. Spirituality has become a big key focus for them too. And in fact, we actually, we didn't get along very well. And that's kind of an interesting story. So with Rick, his goal was for my bottom line. He wanted to see $500,000 saved, cash free and clear in my bank account at a certain time frame. At the end of 2 years, I should have 1 million or 1.5, I can't remember what it was, in savings that is just in my bank account, right? And to do that, you have to do everything he tells you to do. So being a bad little soldier and not doing everything I'm told to do, it naturally didn't become a good fit. One of the things that he told me is he said, you need to sell your property management company and focus exclusively on real estate. And the property management company wasn't as big as it is today, of course. It was maybe 200 doors. We're currently sitting at 530. But yeah, that's a big difference. So anyway, he wanted me to sell this property management company, focus exclusively on real estate, because that's where I was going to get the revenue to put into the coffers.
Got it.
And that's all he cared about.
Right.
That's not my cupcake.
Right.
My cupcake is having the time that I want to invest with other people.
Right.
Right. So, we were at a retreat. Actually, it was at the Biltmore in Asheville, North Carolina. We were just talking about that the other day.
Right.
And we're at this retreat, and we're sitting around a campfire smoking cigars. And I'll never forget the words he said to me. It's really funny. I said, Rick, everything you're teaching and coaching is equally applicable to property management. Now, mind you, I was paying something like $2,000 a month for this coaching, $24,000 a year. It was worth every penny. The stuff that I learned about how to run my business, how to run my operations, how to run my P&Ls and everything, it was worth it. And now I think it's $3,000 a month. I don't even think it's as cheap as it was when I was doing it. And we're sitting around the campfire, and Rick is just totally irritated with me. And he's like, damn it, you want strawberry ice cream. I sell vanilla ice cream. If you want strawberry ice cream, go find somebody who's going to sell you strawberry ice cream. And that's how he fired me as his student. That was it. I was done.
Fired as a student.
I was fired as a student. Yeah. And I appreciated it, but I also, if Rick ever hears this podcast, I hope he understands that I learned so much from him, and I don't resent any of it. It was great. But my next coach was David Herdlinger, who did focus a little bit more on the life balance, and he was really good about, and I love this man. He was really good about understanding what my goals and passions were, how to get there.
Yeah.
What they meant financially was a component of it, but being the best dad that my kids have ever seen was, well, of course, my kids. I wanted to be the best dad of all the dads, right? Like, I'm a guy. Let's make this a
You're a competitive guy.
I'm a very competitive
Most guys
guy.
are, but you're a very competitive guy.
Right. Let's go type A with this. So I wanted to be the best dad on the planet.
Sure.
And he was really good about helping keeping that in balance, but also he helped shape some leadership stuff in me that was a little rough around the edges too. Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example. So somebody comes into my office and I'm having some boss-employee relationship struggles, and he's coaching me through it. And one of the things I end up doing is paying for her coaching.
Okay.
In paying for her coaching, she ends up deciding, I need to go get a different job. And here I just spent all this money paying for her to get coached. And he's like, that's okay. You paid for her to get coached to help her be a better her. And you don't want somebody to be a better what you want them to be if it's not a good fit for them, just like you don't want to do that for you.
Sure.
And that was a little bit of a growing and stretching process for me, because I keep investing in people's lives that keep walking out of my life, right? That's difficult. However, gosh, what he built in there inside my heart with that has now transformed into something completely different, which leads me into what I'm really passionate about right now. And I got to tell you about Martin. Is that okay? I mean, I feel like I'm just running away with
I think we have time.
The mic. Okay.
Yeah. Actually, there's no regulation.
Okay. So Martin has become a friend of the family, and he was a repeat offender DWI. He hit a car while he was drunk. Nobody got hurt, but he failed to stop and render aid. So hit and run. The police come to his house, find out he's a repeat DWI by running his record. They take him to prison, and he goes to prison for a felony DUI for 4 years. Okay. While he's in prison, he gets cleaned up, he gets sober, he finds Jesus and realizes his life has got to be on a different track.
Okay.
Gets out of prison, cannot get a job. The guy's life is completely different now. His mindset's completely different now.
Sure.
He's completely repentant, and nobody will hire him.
Yeah.
Because he's a convicted felon.
Okay.
Okay. So we were sitting there talking, and he's like, I just got it, man. I can mow lawns. I can do something. I'm like, what do you have skill at? And he's like, well, I don't have a lot of skills. I mean, I never got an education. And I just, man, I just praise the Lord, I'm breathing today. And I'm like, okay, well, he's like, I can mow your grass. I'm like, all right, let's start there. So we went to lunch. I took him to a nice restaurant, and I did that to prove a point to him. I wanted to say, the meal you're eating right now that you can't afford today, if you do the things that I'm going to tell you to do, straight up Bob Contreras, right? I'm paying it forward. If you do the things I'm going to tell you to do, this will be something that you can have for yourself and your family because you choose to do it.
Yeah.
And you can provide jobs for other people.
Okay.
It just depends on how much you really want to stick to the process. So basically I tell him, all right, so I'm going to give you a lawn because I have lawns that need to be mowed in property management. I'm going to give you a lawn that needs to be mowed. When you mow that lawn, I want you to knock on the door from every single person in that neighborhood. Tell them the company that you've got and what a normal cost of mowing the lawn is. It's $45. But if they'll do it on Thursday, when you're out there to mow that other lawn, you'll do it for $38 as a neighborhood special because you want to keep all your lawns closer together and you're already there. Okay. So he does it. He knocks on every door in the neighborhood. And sure enough, somebody says, I'll go ahead and do it. And then he knocks on the next street over from that one. And he's like, he finds another lawn.
Sure.
So now all of a sudden he's building his Thursday route.
Yeah.
Well, then all of a sudden he can build a Wednesday route. And I'm fast forwarding for you. But now that you've got a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday route, you can hire somebody that's going to go work on Monday for you while you go pick up another job.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
helping him with the scale concept.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So that he can really start to earn an income. But here's the crazy thing that happened. I live on 4 acres. The road that you drive down, most of the people that live out my road, they have trucks or Jeeps or SUVs, right? This is not a dainty little road. This is, you feel like you're lost and like a banjo starts playing in the background. Yeah. And,
chickens, goats, barns.
Yeah, exactly. And in Texas, a lot of our properties are fenced off and gated. And so it's not a neighborhood that you
don't go door to door. Right. Yeah. We run those folks off.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So he's doing my lawn, but as people drive by, he'll wave at them and smile and say, oh, how are you doing? Yeah, I'm just mowing across his lawn. And guess what? The guy down the street, Dr. Salazar, hires him to mow his lawn.
Yeah.
Will and Veronica Pritchett hire him to mow his lawn. Most of my neighbors, I don't even talk to. He knows more of my neighbors and works for more of my neighbors than I even have a relationship with.
Yeah.
And so I'm just super, super proud of this guy. So it's got me passionate about going to like the Westside Family Services Center in San Antonio and teaching entrepreneurship classes because you can do this at any level.
Yeah.
You can do it at painting.
Right.
You could be a mobile car wash. You can do it. You can do laundry. Yeah. If you wanted to go real basic, you can do childcare. You're a stay-at-home mom. Bring in 3 kids, 4 kids.
What what do you distinguish when someone maybe who should attack this entrepreneurial idea, or who should go try to do that, are the qualities of people you'd say, yeah, you should probably not tackle something like that?
The people who I think should do it. I think you have to have. So I was just recently in Argentina, and there was talking to somebody on the plane, and she's like, "Well, you've got the ganas," and I didn't know what the ganas was, but she explained it to me, and she's like, "It's kind of like
it's a pill you take."
I know, right? It sounds like a disease. No, but ganas is. She described it to me as drive, passion, and desire, all kind of wrapped into this visceral like energy. Right. And so people that have the ganas tend to be successful. And I love that word now, the ganas. And I say you have to have that. You got to have ganas. You got to have the side hustle desire because it's not going to be easy. Yeah. And you're going to make mistakes.
Describe side hustle.
Describe side hustle.
No, it's good. I love this term. We were talking about it this week.
I love side hustle. Side hustle is... I've got to do the daily thing to do my job.
Yes.
But the side hustle is where I'm going to go make a little extra scratch for me.
Yes.
Because I want something more out of my life. Well, I can't tell you how many times the side hustle has become the hustle.
Yes.
That makes it really big for somebody.
That is key, whether you're entrepreneurial, corporate, whatever. I think that's a key thing that I had to learn myself, which is, you're paid for this, but if that's all you want, that slowly deteriorates. It's grow or die, right?
That's right.
And your growth is going to come from the side hustle. It's that thing on that extra differentiated piece that you got to go attack. And it wasn't until I learned that, and the particular person I learned it from, I learned it the hard way. But yeah, once you learn that, you realize, oh yeah, I need to be constantly looking for that differentiation.
Yep.
What's that thing that nobody else is attacking? And you're not going to get extra time. I get folks in the corporate world all the time. I don't have time for that. You're never going to have time for that.
Dude, here's the crazy thing that I don't understand about time. I just don't get it, okay? If I can work 9 to 5, have dinner with my family, go to the soccer practice, and still, okay, let's just start with 24 hours. 24 hours, how many hours do you need to sleep?
7 to 8.
7 to 8. Some people 6,
Yeah.
Some people 7 to 8. We'll just go with 8. Okay. There's 16 hours left.
Right.
Okay. How many hours do you need to spend with your family per day?
Yeah.
2? 3?
Sure.
What's fair? Most people don't take their kids to school. I take
Right.
my kids to school every day. Some dads don't make it home for dinner every night. Shame on you. Get your ass home for dinner. You have time for your family. Stop cheating on your family with work. Okay, I'm off my soapbox, but that's important. So let's just say we're generous with our family. Let's go 3. 3 hours? Okay. We got 13 left.
Yep.
How many are we going to work? 8? Most people work 40 hours a week. Let's go 8. Maybe you're working a little more than that. Okay, fine. I don't
3
know
to
what
4 hours for Warcraft or Call of Duty.
Well, that's
That's
where
what
I'm
happened.
going.
Yeah, that's
where I'm going with
Yeah,
this
yeah,
because
yeah.
now we've got
Yeah.
what are we down to? 13 hours left.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to back out 8. 8 for that's 5. I've got 5 hours left. I'll give you 9 hours for work. Maybe you're really dedicated to your job, right? So 9 times 5 is 45 hours in a week. That's a pretty thick, loaded work week. And maybe you're working 50. Fine. You do your own math, but reality is we still got 4 hours left. You could still carve out 1 or 2 of those for you to go work out. And you still got 2 hours for a side hustle.
Yeah.
Now, if you decide to fill that with Friends and Seinfeld and the Spurs game or whatever other baloney that people watch on TV today, fine. If you want to fill that with Minecraft, fine. But don't tell me that you don't have time for your side hustle. Right? You have time for whatever you want to have time for.
Right. I think you can also, there's side hustle that's even while you're working in your 9 hour, there's side hustle that's incrementally right there that can be tackled too, especially in the corporate world.
Yeah.
I see this all the time where it's like, while you were doing that, why didn't you do this at the same time? That's just an efficiency play. It's a vision thing in a lot of cases. Like, that's a separate thing. That's not my task. I'm here to cover this item and then shift
Right.
onto the next thing. No, right there was this really cool differentiated thing, right? So,
well, and that comes in a lot of different things. So some people are like, well, I don't know anything about how to do that. Well, guess what? I don't know Spanish.
Right.
But I'm opening a business right now in a Spanish-speaking country. So
yeah, I don't have a lot of tolerance for that because the availability of knowledge and information and education is beyond what it's ever been.
I listen to Audible every day.
Right, me
from
too.
Bernie, Texas into San Antonio, Texas after I drop off my kids from school.
Yeah.
I got 35 minutes to listen to a book.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I do the same. I get tons of information coming out either through podcasts or books or something. I get my daily Bible reading in that way. You
That's
get
true.
tons of good ways
That's
of
true.
getting information. I don't see a lot of excuses for that. It's just a vision that you have. You have to have
one
a
of
vision.
the other things. I'm sorry to
Ganas.
cut you off. You're the one leading this thing. I'm cutting you off. It's
No,
hilarious.
the more you talk, the better. They'll hear me all the time.
One of the other things is implementation. So you can listen to these books all the way into the office, right? But if you listen to the book and you close the door and you get out. Oh, and by the way, if you're listening to something like entertaining,
Yeah.
cool. Just remember what you signed up for, right?
Yeah, right.
Like if you don't have the ganas to stick it out and listen to your business book, then maybe you don't have what it takes for your side hustle, back to your point. But a friend of mine, Josh Sigmund, who he's super successful with what he does in the mortgage industry. The differentiator about that guy, by the way, would be a good invitation for your podcast. He is a master at implementation. So if he learns a new thing, he doesn't take 10 things and implement them.
Yeah.
He looks at all 10 and he says, out of these 10, which one's going to move the needle forward the most?
Sure.
I want to implement that one right now. And he'll do it consistently for 6 to 8 weeks. And then I'll go back to his list and implement the next one.
Right.
I'm not nearly as good at implementation as he is.
Yeah.
I'm kind of an all or nothing. I put the watermelon in front of me and I see if I can eat the whole thing and just start at it one bite at a time. So.
I really like the side hustle. I've referred to it in different ways, but the concept is the same. And it doesn't matter whether it's owning your own business, being a single person, company or corporate. I think you've got the same thing happening. For me, I try to keep a stack of these side hustle differentiation type of things. They're not on my PDO. They're not on my deliverable objectives.
Sure.
My official, development stuff. But I've always got the things I think that are collected on the side.
Sure.
And I want to go touch them every once in a while. I just need to kick them down the field a little bit. What's the next roadblock that I want to go uncover? Because that's where these, in the engineering world, that's where the awesome innovations come from. We don't discover this awesome innovation because we're like, I'm just going to go discover the transistor. That never happens like that. You're trying to solve some other problem, and while you're there, you go, oh, that's kind of cool.
Well, it's not just the engineering world.
No, it's everything.
I own a property management and real estate company. Guess what I'm doing? A side hustle.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm in my current job and I've got a side hustle. Now people may say, well, it's not a side hustle. You're an entrepreneur. That's your job. No, it's new, shiny, different, and I'm losing money on it until I make money.
These side hustles, or a lot of these big things in the corporate structure have come from side hustles that were incubated in the right timing in the right place. We didn't raise them up the flagpole right away. Otherwise they just get shot down. Mm-hmm. But you slowly incubate them in the right places and they become bigger things.
You know what winglets are?
No, what's that?
Winglets on the airplanes. So the airplanes used to just have a wing.
Tip?
But now the wing comes up, it curves up and goes vertical.
Yeah.
You know who invented that? Mm. It was an engineer that was working for I believe Boeing, and they had this idea, and he tested the idea on his own. Ended up making something like $1.5 billion by selling winglets, and now every single airline has it for fuel efficiency.
Right,
it's great. A side hustle.
Yeah, it's while you're trying to solve this little thing on the side, then you wind up discovering. Yeah, I agree, and I think we make excuses for not spending time on those things or tackling them. You have to find ways. You've got to go carve that out and you have to think of it, as if it's as important as breathing and eating. That needs to be something that you're carving out sometime. Certainly in the corporate world, I find you've got to carve out time unless you just want to stagnate. And
well, no, I don't want to. I got to be careful there because remember, not everybody's supposed to have this.
Well,
Ganas, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
There are some people that just want to clock out at 5.
Yeah,
and they want to go home and hold their babies. Or maybe, and then put their babies to bed, and then they sit on the couch with their Bud Light and watch the Spurs game, and
there's no problem with. We always use football analogies here. Like, I need some offensive line, and I need a backup offensive line.
Yep.
But if you want to be the quarterback, that's a different kind of aspiration that So if you've got that competitive spirit, you have that drive, you want to do more. You've got to carve out time for these kinds of things to go off and grow.
You absolutely do.
Yeah. Awesome.
I love that. I love that analogy too, because it's people are always really focused on where the drive needs to go, and not everybody does it. Frankly, you know why I really like that analogy? This will help, I think, a little bit more. I can't do what I do without the offensive line.
Absolutely.
So I don't judge that.
Yeah.
I just don't want people to sign up for it.
Yes.
Wrongly.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
You got to be the right.
Right. Yeah, and even when you talk about building teams, it's a normal distribution.
Right.
What I mean by that is you can't have a team full of quarterbacks. You're going to have a hard time. That's not going to work out for you. So
tribe full of Chiefs is going to kill each other.
So you've got to get the right folks. But I've had so many cases of folks that were sitting in backup O-line wanting to be quarterback, but not willing to go carve out this extra piece to go off and tackle. It's something that you have to discipline to go do.
I agree.
And and if it really is that difficult to discipline, it's hard for me to help you any more than that. Yeah, that's just something you have to go tackle. So one of my favorite things, with the podcast is always to reflect back to where you were 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And, when I've developed people over the years and try to help them move from O-line to quarterback or whatever their aspiration is, and try to help them uncover these little tidbits of information, and see the light bulb go off for them to go, oh, that's the piece that I've been missing. Right. And what we call them minutia points. It's this little detailed thing that I learned that was like, oh man, that's the part that I was missing. And oftentimes it can be very tactical. Sometimes it's a bigger item. Looking back for yourself, if you're thinking about the folks that you've trained and developed that are out there tackling their own businesses now, because you've got a team of folks that you drive this direction as well.
I do.
And so when you think back to yourself 10, 15, 20 years ago. How did you word it earlier today? We were discussing this.
Hello, younger me.
Hello, younger me.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's that minutia point that you'd been whispered in your ear and say, this is important?
Boy, that's tough to boil it down that small. There are a few little tips that I think I would give. I think I would give that first lesson of failing forward and how critical that is. Like when you fail forward, you're falling on your hands and knees. Just pick that foot right back up and get back up, keep on walking. I think the first hardest lesson I had to learn, and you might appreciate this knowing my personality, is that nothing ever happens as fast as it does in my head. Right?
Yeah.
Like as I'm building something, nothing on the planet goes as fast as it does in my head.
Yeah.
So that getting that first sale to getting the, executing the product to getting it delivered to getting a referral to getting that next sale is a process that just takes the time that it takes to build and grow it. And I got so frustrated in the very beginning because I wanted to be wealthy tomorrow.
Yeah.
I wanted that little blue pill today for, whatever, so that I could be wealthy tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it was just, it's much more of a grind than I expected. So knowing ahead of time, and I actually think somebody told me that, but I had to experience it for myself.
Sure.
And that's another hard thing is that I have to learn the hard way.
Sure.
God bless me. I swear I do.
You think most people that have the Ganas are that way?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. Well, you couldn't pull it off, but watch me hold my beer.
Right.
And it's always a longer process.
Yeah.
So that's one. Failing forward is super important. Knowing, I had one failure that gave me a lot of anxiety. And a buddy of mine is going through it right now. He got embezzled in the last year, lost $800,000 on an embezzlement. And he's like literally struggling with depression, not knowing how he's going to finally climb out of it. But he's doing it. And he is doing it. He's working on it every single day. And as much as I can, I speak life into him because here's the deal. He doesn't know this, but he has an award coming to him when he gets out of it. There's this small little group of entrepreneurs that once you know this one truth, you have joined this club, and that is every entrepreneur fails at something and fails big. There's going to be some moment in your life that you think, I just really screwed the pooch 6 ways from Sunday on this one, and I don't know how I'm going to recover. So they get a paddle. And the paddle has I survived Shit Creek burned into the paddle. Right. So once he finally gets in the black, which should hopefully happen by March, according to what his books look like, we'll take him out for a beer and we'll give him a Survive Shit Creek t-shirt and a paddle for him to hang on the wall in his office. Nobody ever wants that award.
Sure.
But once you've gone through it and you know that you're a part of this special club that we all understand now,
right? It's
like you really appreciate that damn paddle on the wall because you never want to go there again. So those are those lessons that I don't deal with stress like most people do. I just don't. I've been through enough hard times. I don't think black sedans are going to pull up in my driveway and haul me off into some foreign country. I just don't ever have those kind of concerns. So for me, that period of my life when I had made those really big mistakes and I'd lost that huge amount of money, and I started to deal with stress and anxiety, I called my mom. It's really funny. I'm like, Mom, I just have this feeling of like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know how this is going to work. I feel like I just lost everything. And she's like, honey, that's stress. Welcome to the real world. This is good for you.
It's free coaching.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Mom. Thanks. Oh, it was really funny. She's got to laugh at that because it is pretty ridiculous. But yeah, knowing ahead of time. Oh, and by the way, can I just champion my wife one more time?
Well, I'm going to give you. Let's close. You plug whatever you like.
All right, I'm going to close my wife on that because while I can sit here and talk about all these different things, let's remember one thing. She's the one that asked me the question in the beginning.
Yep.
She's the one that gave me that little extra push.
Yeah.
Guess what?
I can relate to that.
Guess what happened when I was squeezed in this corner and I thought I was going to lose everything that we'd made at that point.
Yeah.
She said, well, I'm not going anywhere. Your kids aren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
We can move into a smaller house.
Sure.
You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And for you to have the person that you do most of everything for in your corner, dude, talk about giving you a sense of freedom.
You bet.
And anybody who doesn't have that, yeah. I don't know how they do it.
Speaks to the value of community for certain in our lives, especially type A folks that want to go off and tackle things on their own, man.
And it doesn't have to be a wife. It can be your best friend. It can be your mom.
You have to have a community surrounding you for sure.
You really do.
Yeah, I agree. Tell us, maybe plug your company. Anything else you're passionate about you want to let people know about?
Oh, I've got a lot of passions. The company name is Red Wagon Properties in San Antonio. The other company is New Burning Bush that my buddy Waylon is now running. We're currently starting businesses in other countries without the need to make a profit. My goal is really to create jobs, because I believe that creating jobs in other countries is the most poignant way to start solving the poverty problem.
Sure.
I mean, we can throw money at all kinds of things, but if you give people dignified work,
sure. Teach a man to fish.
Yeah, you can really all of a sudden change a village.
Yeah.
So those are the things I'm really passionate about right now. If anybody ever wanted to look me up on my website, I'm easy to be found. I'd be happy to talk to them about it, incorporate them in what I'm doing, or maybe they could join us on a legacy trip, or we could incorporate into another business that they're doing and be a part of it. It'd be great.
Sweet.
It'd be a part of the community.
I'll throw a plug on legacy at the back end of this. Since you brought it up, I'll have to describe it for people. But Kris, I've enjoyed hanging out with you this week immensely. It's been a blast. We've had a lot of fun snorkeling and just having a good time. I'll throw some notes in here at the beginning and the end, maybe to let people know what we've been up to. And I appreciate you taking the time. It's a lot of fun. Really helpful. I think there's a lot of folks out there that will listen to this and be like, that's the piece that I was missing.
Well, good. I hope
maybe so.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
All right, bud.
Thanks.
Bye.
Folks, I hope you enjoyed the discussion, learned something. The concept of a side hustle is something a lot of people might know about. I thought that was an interesting point during the discussion. But the connection for me, or kind of the revelation to me, was the connection between, I get side hustle. That's something that a lot of folks will work on separate from their day job or their primary job. But the idea or the connection between incubating new innovative ideas and how you have to carve out time for that, even in your day job, is an interesting thing. I think, incubation is something that probably needs an entire episode, but definitely want to encourage you to, if you're interested in being the quarterback, if you've got that gonus, you've got that drive, you're looking for more, want to carve something out for yourself, you've got to dedicate some time to putting down some ideas and getting them moving a little bit. And I think that's a whole separate conversation, but I thought it was very interesting. But side hustles are important. I think it keeps you motivated. It gives you a sense of purpose. It gives you something you can control. You're listening to one of my side hustles right now. So having something like that does scratch an itch for a lot of people, certainly does for me. And another one of the side hustles we talked about that Kris alluded to was legacy. And I won't talk a lot about it because I'm going to post a video down on the website so you can go see it in the links section. But legacy is something that we started as part of an organization that I volunteered and serve on the board for called Wonder Voyage. And it's kind of a branch off of Wonder Voyage where we've been going to these locations and traveling and taking groups of people into different locations where there's a lot of need. In this particular case, Kris alluded to, we were in Belize, and there was a spot, a small village, no school to be found. And so we started saying, well, is there something that we could do, right? If somebody else needs to do something about this, well, what can we do about it? And so we gathered some people together, raised some funds, and made an impact there. So I'll include the video as well. That's another side hustle. But definitely want to encourage you to carve out some time to be thinking. Like I said in the episode, I write down things I think. So those are not things I carry to everybody. I hold those close to my vest, and then I share those with maybe a short collection of people that I know won't shoot down my ideas or that are motivated to about my best interest at least, or are not going to just destroy me. So, but that's a separate episode altogether, folks. I hope you have a great week. Thanks for listening. Go subscribe so you get automatic notifications. And if wherever you're listening, if there's a spot for a review, would appreciate feedback there as well. Thanks a lot, folks. Have a great week.